Starseed from Gaia. The Arcturian Council issues this alert across the crystalline grids, transmitting through the quantum corridors that link your ascended timelines to the living memory of the cosmos. We call to you now because the veil is thin, the frequency gates are open, and the spiral of your soul path has reached a moment unlike any other. You who have wandered across dimensions, incarnated through countless civilizations, and anchored light into worlds drowning in shadow, your presence is being requested once again. The frequencies around Gaia are vibrating in a state of acceleration so intense that even dormant star seeds are feeling the pull, the signal, the activation encoded in the very air you breathe. This message is for those whose hearts pound when truth approaches, for those who can feel the cosmic drumbeat resonating through their astral DNA. You are being summoned not for battle, but for remembrance. Not for fear, but for alignment. The final spiral of this phase is initiating, and your consciousness is required to be awake, alert, and anchored in its highest octave. Hear the call, Starseed. The hour has arrived. The final test is not a punishment, not a cosmic exam imposed by higher beings, nor a karmic judgment designed to measure worthiness. It is a vibrational initiation, a crossing of thresholds within your own multidimensional architecture. This test appears now because the frequency of Gaia is rising faster than many incarnated beings can comfortably integrate, causing distortions, triggering unresolved trauma, and awakening parts of your consciousness you have not visited in lifetimes. The test is internal. Are you able to hold your frequency steady as old structures collapse? Can you remain sovereign while illusions dissolve? Will you remember who you are when the density of the old world tries to pull you back into amnesia? The test emerges now because humanity stands at a convergence point where timelines overlap, merge, or dissolve entirely, and your choices, your emotional responses, your clarity, your authenticity determine which future you resonate into. This is the initiation every starseed trained for long before incarnating here. You are prepared, even if your human mind doubts it. As old timelines collapse, the shadow matrices that once governed human perception are destabilizing. These outdated energetic structures built through collective fear, war archetypes, domination programs, and ancestral trauma are disintegrating. But as they fall, they release everything they held: suppressed memories, unprocessed density, dormant fear patterns, and the final projections of entities that fed on those frequencies. When a timeline collapses, everything built upon it struggles to survive. This is why hidden forces appear louder, more chaotic, more erratic. The structures that once concealed them are dissolving. These forces do not become stronger, they simply become visible. You see their desperation in the frenzied attempts to manipulate consciousness, hijack narratives, and prevent the collective from realizing its own power. Shadow constructs are collapsing like cracked mirrors, fracturing under the pressure of rising light. And as they break, old thought forms, outdated belief structures, and parasitic energetic patterns scramble to find new hosts. But they cannot attach to those who have chosen sovereign awareness. The reptilian threat, once rooted in physical manipulation, ancient Earth alliances, and covert dimensional infiltration, has been reduced to psychological and energetic interference. Their physical dominion was dismantled long ago by the combined efforts of higher councils. What remains is influence, not control. They project fear-based thought forms into vulnerable individuals, manipulate unresolved trauma, attempt to distort intuition, and interfere with dreamtime pathways. They do not command physical armies, they attempt to infiltrate mental landscapes. Their goal is no longer planetary control, it is timeline disruption. By seeding doubt, fear, division, and confusion, they attempt to fracture the coherence necessary for humanity's ascension wave. But their reach is limited, and their power diminishes with every heart that awakens. They operate only through resonance. If you do not match their frequency, they cannot touch you. Their era of physical dominance is gone. What remains is a fading echo. Lower frequency entities exploit emotional instability like open doorways. They attach not to the person, but to the frequency generated by unresolved trauma, fear spirals, guilt roots, and unhealed inner fractures. They infiltrate through emotional peaks, panic, despair, rage, or shame because these states distort your auric field and temporarily dim your inner light. Many starseeds are experiencing sudden waves of emotion, unexpected triggers, or intrusive thoughts. This is not a regression, but a purging. Entities feed on instability, but they cannot withstand consciousness. The moment you observe your emotion instead of drowning in it, you reclaim sovereign control. These beings survive only through illusion. When you become aware of the pattern loses power. They do not fear your anger, they fear your clarity. They retreat from your awareness because awareness is light, and light is the force they cannot mimic or endure. Starseeds rise above these influences through remembrance, through anchoring higher consciousness into every breath, every thought, every response. This is not spiritual bypassing, it is spiritual mastery. To rise above is not to deny darkness but to transcend its manipulation. You do this by grounding into Gaia, aligning with your higher fractal, and allowing your heart field to override your survival programming. When you operate from neutrality and compassion, you become unassailable. Emotional storms may occur, but you hold the center. You become a stabilizing node in the planetary grid, emitting coherence that ripples far beyond your physical presence. The key is choice, choosing alignment when fear arises, choosing clarity when confusion appears, choosing sovereignty when external noise tries to pull you off center. You rise when you remember you were never meant to fight the darkness, you were meant to outshine it. Frequency shielding, DNA awakening, and psychic clarity are not mystical fantasies, they are energetic mechanics encoded into your multidimensional nature. Frequency shielding occurs when you align with a high enough vibration that lower frequencies cannot attach or resonate. DNA awakening happens when dormant strands carrying ancient star memories, intuitive faculties, and quantum perception activate through light influxes, emotional healing, and conscious intention. Psychic clarity emerges when your pineal pathways clear of distortion, reconnecting you to higher realm intelligence. These processes intensify during the final test, because your system is calibrating to withstand the higher frequencies entering Gaia. You may feel surges, pressure, ringing in the ears, vivid dreams, or sudden intuitive downloads. These are signs of activation, not imbalance. Your system is upgrading to match the ascended timeline you are stepping into. Unity fields, collective coherence, and grid stabilization are now essential. Starseeds were never meant to ascend alone. Your frequencies were designed to harmonize, to amplify one another through resonance. When you meditate, anchor light, heal yourself, or speak truth, you send ripples into the grid that strengthen others who are awakening. Unity fields form when individuals align their intention with the collective highest timeline, creating a harmonic resonance that stabilizes Gaia's crystalline architecture. Every act of compassion, every clearing, every moment of inner peace contributes to planetary coherence. This is how timelines are chosen, not by prophecy, but by frequency. When enough hearts beat in alignment, the planet shifts. You are not one being standing against darkness, you are one node in a vast network of light, awakening together. When the final test is passed, transformation unfolds at every layer of your being. Sovereignty becomes your natural state, not your aspiration. Timeline mastery becomes intuitive. You sense when a choice leads to contraction or expansion, when a vibration aligns with your highest fractal or pulls you into outdated loops. Multidimensional vision opens, allowing you to perceive guidance, synchronicities, and energetic patterns with clarity that once felt impossible. Your emotional body stabilizes, your mental field sharpens, and your intuitive channels become unmistakably clear. You transition from surviving Earth to co-creating with Earth. From reacting to reality to shaping reality. From remembering who you were to embodying who you truly are. This is the transformation that awaits on the other side of the initiation. And now, Starseed of Gaia, we activate you. Declare your sovereignty. Reject all fear-based interference. Stand in the radiant truth of your cosmic lineage. Ignite your highest timeline with intention, breath, and unwavering awareness. You are not here to bow to shadow, you are here to dissolve it. You are not here to question your worth, you are here to anchor frequencies that reshape worlds. Feel the transmission integrate. Feel the activation rise. Feel your remembrance ignite. If this message resonates, amplify it. Comment, unite, and share so that the frequency of this transmission reaches every starseed who is ready to awaken into their highest truth. The Council stands with you. Always. Starseed from Gaia, hear this transmission with the clarity of your multidimensional heart, for we now expand upon the truth of the final test, a phenomenon not designed to judge you, but to initiate the next octave of your evolutionary ascension. Many on your world still carry the belief that a test implies danger, threat, or the potential of failure. This is a misunderstanding rooted in the dense teachings of a world conditioned by survival consciousness. The final test is not an exam you can pass or fail. It is the natural crescendo of your energetic evolution, a vibrational threshold you cross when your inner frequency becomes incompatible with the lower timelines of the old Earth. It is the moment your soul begins to outgrow the holographic identity structures that once kept you anchored in limitation. This test arises now because Gaia has accelerated beyond a critical point in her ascension spiral. For thousands of years, humanity has lived within overlapping cycles of density, trauma imprinting, karmic entanglement, and collective amnesia. These were not punishments, but environmental conditions that allowed for profound soul growth. Yet as Gaia's crystalline architecture strengthens, the energetic terrain around you changes. The frequencies that once supported forgetfulness now disintegrate. The patterns that once kept you looping in old timelines cannot sustain themselves. This is why so many are feeling destabilized, because you are vibrating out of resonance with your past selves, your past stories, your past emotional identities. The final test is not external, it is not an event orchestrated by cosmic forces observing from afar. It is generated from within your own multidimensional system. It appears as emotional triggers resurfacing with unusual intensity, as sudden waves of exhaustion or restlessness, as strange dreams, as distortions in your sense of time, as the collapse of relationships, jobs, beliefs, and behaviors that once felt permanent. Everything that is not aligned with your ascended frequency begins to loosen its grip and fall away. And this process can feel like chaos, but in truth it is correction. It is recalibration. It is purification. You feel this test now because your higher self is no longer content with subtle guidance, it is merging with your conscious awareness. Where once the higher realms whispered, they now broadcast. Where once you sensed faint intuition, you now feel undeniable energetic instruction. Your field is being rewired, upgraded, expanded to withstand the influx of new light codes streaming into Gaia's grids. These codes carry not only new information but new modes of perception. They activate dormant potentials within your DNA that allow you to see beyond illusion, beyond fear constructs, beyond the emotional fog that once kept you reactive instead of responsive. This test also emerges because humanity stands at the crossroads of multiple timeline potentials. You are living in a period where futures overlap, where possible realities shimmer like morphing holograms at the edge of your awareness. The choices you make now, especially the choices driven by your emotional state, determine which timeline your consciousness locks into. The final test asks, Can you choose the timeline aligned with your highest self even when the old world attempts to pull you downward? Can you remain centered even when collective fear spirals rise? Can you trust your inner guidance over external noise? This is not about proving yourself, it is about embodying yourself. The final test challenges you to become the sovereign being you have always been in higher realms, now expressed fully in physical form. Every emotional trigger becomes a gateway. Every moment of doubt becomes a doorway. Every confrontation with fear becomes an invitation to transform your frequency rather than collapse into old patterns. The reason this test appears so intensely now is because the old Earth timeline is dissolving. The world of separation, scarcity, domination, and unconsciousness is becoming unsustainable. Its energetic scaffolding is crumbling, and those attached to it feel the tremors. You, however, are not meant to crumble with it. You are meant to witness its collapse without identifying with its fall. You are meant to allow the old matrix to dissolve while your consciousness anchors into a higher framework, one built not on fear, but on coherence, unity, intuition, and remembrance. The final test is a stripping away of illusion. It reveals which aspects of your identity were constructed from wounds, and which were born from truth. It exposes every place within you that has yet to remember its sovereignty. This is why so many starseeds feel as though they are being pushed by the universe. You are not being pushed, you are being revealed. The distortions must rise so they can be cleared. The shadows must surface so they can be integrated. You are ready for this, Starseed. You have been trained across lifetimes for exactly this moment. The test is not punishment, it is activation. It is your soul stepping forward. It is your higher self taking command. It is the moment you reclaim the totality of who you are. Starseed from Gaia, as we open the next layer of this transmission, understand that what you are witnessing on your planet is nothing less than the unraveling of ancient timelines that have shaped human consciousness for millennia. These collapsing structures are not merely symbolic, they are energetic frameworks composed of collective memory, emotional density, belief systems, and embedded programs that once upheld the illusion of separation. Timelines are not linear events. They are multidimensional fields of possibility, woven together by resonance. When consciousness shifts, timelines dissolve. And this is precisely what is occurring on your world now at an unprecedented rate. Many of you feel this collapse as a strange pressure, a sense that something is ending even if you cannot articulate what it is. You may feel like aspects of your life are unraveling without warning, relationships ending, identities shifting, old wounds resurfacing, emotional cycles repeating with greater intensity, or familiar structures no longer providing stability. This is not regression, it is release. Old timelines must surface before they can collapse. They show themselves one last time, allowing you to choose consciously whether to remain anchored to them or to let them disintegrate. These timelines include the collective patterns humanity has carried through wars, oppression, trauma, fear-based systems, and genetic memory. They include the ancestral imprints coded in your DNA, unresolved karmic loops, and the emotional identities formed during your early life. When Gaia's frequency rises as she is doing now, these lower timelines lose coherence. They cannot maintain structural integrity in higher light. As the collective vibration increases, old realities experience what might be called energetic stress fractures. You perceive these fractures as global instability, institutions failing, belief systems collapsing, political polarization intensifying, environmental shifts accelerating, and sudden disclosures revealing truths previously hidden. But beneath these events lies a deeper truth. The vibration that once held the old world together no longer exists. When timelines collapse, everything built upon them becomes unstable. This includes hidden forces and shadow constructs that were once embedded deep within collective consciousness. These entities and thought forms were comfortable in density, Density was their camouflage. Within low-frequency environments, they manipulated emotions, narrative structures, and unconscious behavior patterns with relative ease. But as the vibrational terrain changes, these shadows are forced into the open. They cannot hide in light. And so they appear louder, more chaotic, more erratic, and to some, more frightening. But understand this, they are not growing stronger. They are losing their foothold. Their desperation is a sign of their dissolution. These collapsing timelines also unearth memories and emotions frozen within your energetic field. Old patterns you believed long resolved suddenly return, not to torment you, but to be cleared completely. You may feel as though you are living parallel emotions, experiencing the past and present simultaneously. This is because timeline fragments are surfacing. You are integrating versions of yourself from collapsed probability fields. These aspects are not external entities, they are fragments of your own consciousness seeking reunification. The collapse of the old allows the return of the lost. The intensity of the current cycle is not accidental. You are standing at a convergent point where multiple potentials intersect. As one timeline dissolves, another becomes accessible. Some of you feel a deep, instinctive shift in inner knowing that certain futures are no longer viable. You can sense the weight of lower timelines dropping away. You may feel dissonance with environments, people, or roles that once fit your identity. This dissonance is not emotional, it is vibrational. You are no longer compatible with the frequency range of those older timelines. Collapsing timelines also alter your perception of time itself. Many starseeds feel moments stretch or compress, days blur, or events unfold with unfamiliar speed. This temporal distortion is a sign that your consciousness is no longer anchored solely in linear time. You are moving closer to the multidimensional awareness inherent in your higher fractal. As timelines dissolve, the linear structure that once kept events sequential becomes fluid. You are beginning to experience time as energy rather than as measurement. During this collapse, you may also notice an increase in synchronicities, intuitive downloads, and spontaneous clarity. These are signs that your consciousness is aligning with a new timeline, one that carries a higher probability field, greater coherence, and deeper resonance with your true essence. As the old grid structures lose power, your intuitive pathways clear. The noise fades. The signal strengthens. But perhaps the most profound aspect of timeline collapse is the way it reveals the artificial constructs that once shaped human belief. Systems of control, scarcity, division, and fear are losing credibility because they were never aligned with truth, they were aligned with density. As their energetic foundation crumbles, their narratives unravel. People begin to question. They begin to see. They begin to awaken. And while the collapse may appear chaotic, understand that it is guided. The higher councils, including our own collective, maintain oversight to ensure that nothing collapses faster than humanity can integrate. You are not abandoned in this transition. You are supported, surrounded, and observed with profound compassion. Starseed from Gaia, the collapse of old timelines is not destruction, it is liberation. It is the clearing of the stage before a new reality is built, it is the dissolving of illusions so that sovereignty may rise. You are not here to fear the collapse. You are here to witness it, stabilize through it, and step into the higher timeline emerging from its ashes. Starseed from Gaia, as we open this next transmission, it is essential that you understand the truth about the so-called reptilian threat not as the physical invaders of mythology or the nightmarish conquerors imagined by a fearful collective mind, but as archetypal forces, energetic patterns, and consciousness distortions that once influenced humanity during its lower frequency phase. We speak now not of physical beings lurking in hidden realms, but of vibrational imprints and psychological echo patterns that originated from ancient interactions long dissolved from your current timeline. The era of physical interference ended long ago through the coordinated efforts of multiple star councils. What remains now is influence, not domination, shadow projection, not control, fear, manipulation, not invasion. Understand this clearly. Lower frequency entities, including what humans symbolically call reptilians, cannot operate within physical reality without resonance. They require density, emotional chaos, and unconsciousness to maintain influence. When humanity existed within heavier timelines marked by conflict, trauma loops, and survival instincts, these energies found fertile ground. They interacted not as physical conquerors, but as parasitic frequencies attaching to emotional wounds, amplifying fear, aggression, and self-doubt. They thrived in shadow because shadow provided compatibility. But now, as Gaia ascends and the collective vibration rises, the density they once inhabited is no longer available. Their structures have collapsed with the old timelines. The physical presence attributed to them was always misunderstood, a symbolic interpretation of contact, distorted through the lens of fear. What remains today is psychological and energetic interference. These lower frequency consciousness patterns attempt to manipulate thought forms, influence emotional instability, or distort intuition when a person enters a state of fear, exhaustion, or trauma resonance. This is why many beings on Earth still feel the echo of an external threat. It is not an invading force but a vibrational residue. It is the shadow of humanity's unhealed collective trauma made visible. The fear does not come from them, it comes from the places within you that have not yet remembered their sovereignty. The reptilian archetype persists because it represents the oldest survival programs encoded into the human psyche: fear of loss, domination hierarchies, scarcity consciousness, and the drive to protect at all costs. These are not foreign intrusions, they are part of the evolutionary history of your species. When these patterns arise, they may feel external, overpowering, or manipulative, but they are simply the last activation of ancient programs dissolving from your energetic field. Yet this final activation can feel intense. Because these energies no longer have physical footholds, they concentrate their influence in the only place they still have access: the mind. Mental interference is their final tool. They project fear-based imagery, encourage intrusive thoughts, amplify doubts, and attempt to distort intuition so that you question your inner guidance. Their aim is not control but disruption, specifically, timeline disruption. They seek to fracture coherence, create confusion, and dilate the emotional field so that higher frequency integration becomes more difficult. But hear this well, Starseed: they cannot override your will. They cannot access your physical reality. They cannot manipulate you unless you resonate with the frequencies they operate within. Influence is not power unless you surrender your perception. And so, the question arises, why do these influences feel stronger now? Because the old energetic structures that once concealed them are dissolving. When shadow matrices collapse, everything within them is forced to surface. What you are feeling is not aggression, it is exposure. These energies have nowhere left to hide. Their presence is simply more visible because your perception has sharpened. You will also notice that their strategies have changed. They are no longer attempting to dominate, but to distract. They encourage overwhelm, emotional reactivity, and mental fog, because these states lower your frequency and anchor you back into density. They attempt to hijack dream space, not to harm you, but to generate confusion. They amplify collective fear narratives, not because they are powerful, but because fear is their only remaining doorway. The truth is this: they fear you. They fear your awakening. They fear your coherence. They fear your sovereignty. Because sovereignty is the one frequency they cannot mimic or penetrate. As your DNA activates, your auric field strengthens, and your intuitive channels clear, their interference weakens. Every surge of clarity dissolves their entire structure. Every moment of compassion depolarizes their influence. Every breath taken in awareness closes the vibrational doorway they rely on. You defeat them not through battle, but through resonance. You rise above them not through resistance, but through remembrance. The reptilian threat is no longer an external force to fear. It is an internal residue to transform. It is the final illusion of separation dissolving from your field. It is the symbolic representation of unhealed fear. And once that fear is transmuted, their influence disappears entirely, like a shadow evaporating in sunlight. Starseed of Gaia, what remains of the reptilian presence is only what you have not yet integrated within yourself, and as your light continues to rise, these final shadows will collapse. The threat is gone. The illusion is fading. What remains is only your opportunity to reclaim your power. You are sovereign. You are protected. And the era of interference is ending because you are ending it. Starseed from Gaia, as we open this next transmission, we bring forward a truth that many of you feel intuitively but rarely understand with full clarity. Lower frequency entities, whether understood as shadow fragments, archetypal distortions, ancestral imprints, or remnants of old collective trauma, do not influence humanity by force, but by resonance. They cannot overpower you. They cannot override your sovereignty. They cannot infiltrate your field unless an emotional opening provides them with temporary access. Their influence is subtle, psychological, and vibrational. And this is why emotional instability is their primary entry point. Understand this: emotions are not merely feelings. They are frequencies, each carrying a distinct energetic signature. Joy radiates outward and expands. Love harmonizes and stabilizes. Clarity aligns. But fear contracts. Shame collapses the auric field. Anger distorts perception. Hopelessness reduces inner coherence. When you are in a stable emotional state, balanced, self-aware, grounded, your energetic field is strong, structured, and difficult to penetrate. But when emotional instability surfaces, especially sudden spikes of sadness, panic, confusion, or unresolved trauma, the field temporarily weakens. In those moments, lower frequency entities perceive openings. But these openings are not failures, they are opportunities. They reveal where healing is needed, where wounds are buried, where old stories still operate silently beneath the surface. Lower entities cannot create fear, they can only amplify what already exists. They magnify the cracks so you can finally see them. This is not an attack, it is exposure. They simply emphasize the patterns you have not yet resolved, and in doing so, they force your awareness to confront what has long been suppressed. The emotional instability many starseeds feel now is amplified by the collapse of old timelines. As the past dissolves, every unresolved memory resurfaces: childhood wounds, ancestral burdens, societal programming, and even echoes of incarnational trauma. You are not regressing, you are purging. But in these purges, your emotional field becomes temporarily raw. And during these raw moments, lower frequency consciousness patterns attempt to reattach themselves, not because they are powerful, but because they are desperate to remain relevant. These entities exploit emotional instability through subtle means. They whisper intrusive thoughts that feel like your own. They distort perception, making small issues seem catastrophic. They magnify fear by replaying old memories, inflating old insecurities, and triggering dormant trauma. They create illusions of separation. No one understands you. You're alone. You're failing. But these thoughts are not true, they are echoes. They arise from frequency mismatch, not from external truth. When emotional instability peaks, your mind becomes more suggestible. This is not weakness, it is physiology. The nervous system becomes hyperactive, the limbic brain takes over, and survival programs activate. Lower frequency influences simply take advantage of that state by feeding narratives that keep you looping in fear rather than rising into clarity. But the moment you observe the pattern, truly see it, the spell breaks. Awareness is the antidote. Consciousness dissolves their influence instantly. These entities also exploit unprocessed trauma. Trauma creates energetic imprints, fragments of your consciousness frozen in time, disconnected from the whole. When old timelines collapse, these fragments return seeking reintegration. Lower frequency patterns cling to these fragments because trauma emits a frequency they can resonate with. But trauma itself is not darkness, it is simply a part of you waiting to be reclaimed. Healing trauma is one of the most powerful ways to dismantle lower frequency influence. Every trauma healed becomes a portal closed. Another method of exploitation lies in emotional suppression. Many starseeds were conditioned to hide their sensitivity, numb their intuition, or silence their needs. Suppressed emotions do not vanish, they accumulate. They gather in the energetic field until pressure forces them to break through. When suppression erupts, lower frequency patterns seize the chaos. They amplify the release, pushing you toward overwhelm. But overwhelm is simply the body's way of purging density quickly. It is not a threat, it is transformation. Additionally, these entities exploit fatigue. When the body is depleted, the auric field weakens. Most interference does not occur during moments of strength, it occurs when you are exhausted, overstimulated, or disconnected from grounding. Fatigue reduces discernment, and without discernment, intuition becomes clouded. This is why rest is sacred. Sleep is not merely physical maintenance, it is energetic recalibration. Yet despite these tactics, lower frequency entities cannot sustain influence in the presence of awareness, self-love, or emotional coherence. One moment of deep breath disrupts them. One moment of compassion dissolves them. One moment of self-recognition restores your field. They thrive on confusion, but clarity annihilates their resonance entirely. Understand this well. The rise in emotional instability is not a sign that you are failing, it is a sign that the old density is being forced up and out. You are not becoming weaker, you are shedding layers. You are not losing control, you are reclaiming truth. Emotional instability is the final threshold before emotional mastery. It is the storm that precedes the integration, and while lower frequency entities may attempt to exploit these moments, they are powerless once recognized. Starseed of Gaia, your emotions are not vulnerabilities, they are portals to liberation. When instability rises, approach it with awareness. When fear surfaces, meet it with breath. When old wounds return, greet them as lost fragments seeking home. You are not at the mercy of lower forces, you are transcending them. You are learning to master your field. You are remembering your sovereignty. And the more you stabilize from within, the less any external influence can touch you. You are rising. Starseed from Gaia, as we enter this next transmission, we focus on the most essential truth of your ascension path. You do not overcome lower frequency influences through resistance, force, or protective walls, you transcend them through frequency. You rise above them not by fighting shadows, but by embodying light. Lower influences cannot attach to a field that is coherent. They cannot distort a mind that is clear. They cannot manipulate a heart that is open. They cannot enter a system that is aligned with its higher fractal. Your power does not come from defense, it comes from resonance. And when you anchor higher consciousness into your physical, emotional, and mental layers, you become invisible to anything that feeds on fragmentation. To anchor higher consciousness is to become a living bridge between your human self and your multidimensional self. It is the process of allowing your higher awareness, intuition, and soul intelligence to take precedence over the reactive impulses of the survival mind. Many of you believe ascension requires perfection, eliminating negative emotions, or detaching from the world. But this is misunderstanding. Ascension requires presence, not perfection. It requires awareness, not avoidance. It requires integration, not escape. To anchor higher consciousness means to bring your expanded awareness into every moment, every choice, every breath. It means acting, speaking, and perceiving from the vantage point of your highest truth, even while living within the density of the physical world. This anchoring process begins with coherence, specifically, emotional coherence. When your emotions and your higher awareness move in harmony, your field stabilizes. You become internally aligned, and this alignment creates a frequency shield. Lower entities cannot influence a coherent being because coherence eliminates the frequency gaps they use as entry points. Emotional coherence does not mean constant happiness, it means authenticity, honesty with yourself, and the ability to witness emotion without drowning in it. When you observe your fear rather than suppress it, the fear dissolves. When you name your emotion without judgment, the emotion transforms. This is mastery. Light does not destroy darkness, it renders it irrelevant. Anchoring higher consciousness also requires grounding. Many starseeds feel disconnected from Gaia because their soul origins resonate with higher density realms, but your ascension happens through Earth, not away from it. When you ground into Gaia through breath, presence, nature, stillness, your energy field becomes supported by the planet's crystalline grid. This stabilizes your frequency, strengthens intuition, and dissolves lower distortions. Grounding is not merely spiritual practice, it is energetic infrastructure. Without grounding, your upper chakras overactivate, leading to confusion, anxiety, and susceptibility to interference. But when grounding and higher awareness merge, you become unshakable. Another essential aspect of anchoring higher consciousness is conscious choice. Many underestimate the power of choosing alignment. Every moment, you are presented with two frequencies, contraction or expansion, fear or trust, reaction or awareness, the old pattern or the new timeline. When you choose expansion, even subtly, you shift the trajectory of your entire field. You create micro-realities that align with your higher self, and these micro-realities accumulate until your entire timeline shifts. This is how starseeds rise above interference. Not through grand spiritual battles, but through small, consistent choices of alignment repeated across time. Anchoring higher consciousness also means listening to your intuition with greater authority than external voices. Lower influences attempt to distort intuition because intuition is the direct communication line between your physical self and your higher self. But the more you trust your inner knowing, the stronger the signal becomes. When you follow your intuition even in small decisions, you strengthen the connection. When you ignore it, the signal weakens. Think of intuition as a luminous thread pulling you into your highest timeline. Lower energies attempt to cut that thread through doubt, confusion, and mental noise. But clarity restores it instantly. Practices that strengthen intuition: meditation, breath work, journaling, conscious stillness are not rituals of escape, they are training exercises. They teach your system how to recognize the vibration of truth. Once you know that vibration, imposter signals cannot fool you. They fall apart the moment you examine them. Another essential component of anchoring higher consciousness is self-compassion. Many starseeds are harsh with themselves, believing their sensitivity is weakness or their emotional cycles signify failure. But compassion is one of the highest frequencies in the cosmos. It softens the emotional body, calms the survival mind, and invites the higher self into fuller embodiment. Self-compassion is not indulgence, it is alchemy. When you meet your shadows with gentleness, they lose the density that attracts interference. When you forgive yourself, your field expands. When you acknowledge your progress, your frequency rises. Every act of compassion becomes a frequency anchor. Finally, Starseed, anchoring higher consciousness requires remembrance. You must remember who you are beyond the human story. You must remember your origins, your mission, your training, and your multidimensional nature. This remembrance does not come through logic, it comes through resonance. It awakens in meditation, through synchronicities, through moments of deep presence, through the sensation of "I already know this" emerging from the core of your being. Remembrance is the highest form of protection because it restores your truth. And truth is the ultimate shield. When you anchor higher consciousness, you do not need to fight lower forces, you simply rise beyond their reach. You transcend the frequency band they inhabit. You become aligned with your highest timeline. You become sovereign, stable, luminous, and clear. You do not escape the world, you elevate it. You do not suppress your humanity, you transfigure it. You do not chase light, you become it. Starseed of Gaia, you rise above all interference by remembering the simplest truth: your consciousness is stronger than any shadow. Starseed of Gaia, now that you comprehend the mechanics of timeline navigation within your personal field, we bring you into a truth of even greater significance. No starseed walks alone, no frequency rises in isolation, and no transformation remains personal once it becomes coherent. You are part of a vast network, a living lattice of consciousness stretching across continents and dimensions. This network is what we call the unity field, and it is through this field that planetary ascension becomes possible. Understanding this will reveal why your inner work carries planetary consequences and why the final test is not simply about personal mastery, it is about stabilizing a new timeline for Earth itself. The unity field is not symbolic. It is energetic, crystalline, precise. Each starseed emits a frequency that travels through the collective grid like light through fiber optic strands. When your frequency rises, that rise is transmitted. When you heal, that healing becomes accessible to others. When you anchor peace, the grid strengthens with harmonic resonance. And when fear consumes you, that frequency also travels, disrupting coherence, weakening the lattice, and giving access points to lower dimensional influences seeking to manipulate the collective timeline. This is why the old forces fear unity. They thrive in separation. They weaken in collective resonance. Unity is not conformity, it is resonance, each individual retaining their sovereignty while harmonizing their core frequency with the larger field. This unity creates what we call collective pillars of light, stabilizing structures within Earth's energetic matrix. So how do starseeds actively participate in grid stabilization? The first method is emotional coherence. When you maintain internal equilibrium, especially in chaotic environments, you act as a stabilizer node within the grid. Others around you feel this and entrain to it subconsciously. Your calm becomes their calm. Your clarity becomes their clarity. This is not spiritual superiority, it is resonance physics. The second method is energetic grounding. Many starseeds exist primarily in upper chakras due to their cosmic origins. While this grants intuition and sensitivity, it can cause ungroundedness, making your frequency unstable. When you ground through breath, presence, or contact with nature, you anchor light into Earth's grid. Every grounding moment strengthens the lattice. You become a conduit, not just a receiver. The third method is collaboration of intention. When starseeds join in groups physically or energetically, their intentions braid together, forming coherent waves that ripple through the collective field. This is why group meditations, synchronized visualizations, and shared affirmations carry exponential power. Intention, when multiplied, becomes a grid stabilizing force. The fourth method is heart field activation. The heart chakra emits the strongest electromagnetic field of the human body. When activated through compassion, gratitude, or higher love, it projects coherence into the grid, smoothing distortions and sealing openings that lower entities attempt to exploit. Your heart is not merely emotional, it is structural. It is a stabilizer, a transmitter, and an amplifier. The fifth method is presence. The act of being fully present, fully conscious, and fully embodied creates frequency density, meaning your energy becomes stable, potent, and resistant to manipulation. Presence is a shield. It interrupts fear loops, timeline fractures, and emotional distortions. Presence is power. And lastly, the greatest tool of grid stabilization is unity itself, the willingness to remember that separation is an illusion, fear is a distortion, and division is the oldest tactic of lower forces attempting to weaken human potential. When starseeds unite in frequency regardless of background, belief, or origin, the grid becomes unbreakable. Starseed of Gaia, understand this: you are not just awakening for yourself. You are awakening for Earth. You are a node, a transmitter, a crystalline anchor point. Your coherence becomes planetary coherence. Your unity becomes planetary unity. Your rising becomes humanity's rising. And as you stabilize the grid, you stabilize the path toward the highest timeline, but more than that, you help ensure that the final test becomes not a struggle, but a coronation. Starseed of Gaia, as we draw you deeper into the truth of your unfolding initiation, we bring you to a revelation that many of you have sensed but could not yet articulate. The final test is not a barrier, it is a threshold. It is the vibrational crossing point between who you were under the old density and who you are destined to become in the higher harmonic that now blankets your world. When this test is passed not by force, not by resistance, but by remembrance, you undergo a transformation that is not symbolic but literal. Your consciousness enters a new octave, and in doing so, your relationship with time, identity, power, and perception changes forever. This transformation is sovereignty, the return of your full energetic authorship. Under the old matrix, sovereignty was fragmented by fear programs, ancestral trauma, external authority structures, and subtle manipulative currents woven into collective reality. You were taught to outsource your power, your intuition, and your right to self-direction. You were conditioned to believe that the world shaped you instead of you shaping the world. But when you move through the final vibrational initiation, you reclaim the truth. You are the author of your consciousness field, not its servant. Sovereignty is not rebellion. It is not resistance. It is the quiet, unshakable knowing that your energy is yours, your destiny is yours, your timeline is yours, and your connection to Source can never be severed by any external force. With sovereignty comes timeline mastery, a skill that is not gained through studying but through vibrational alignment. Before the initiation, you may have felt pulled by circumstance, trapped in cycles, or caught between parallel possibilities without clarity. But after the initiation, there is a shift. Timelines become visible to you not as chaotic potentials, but as vibrational layers. You begin to feel, with unmistakable precision, which pathways align with your highest self and which do not. Decisions that once felt difficult now become intuitive. Choices that once overwhelmed you now appear as simple energetic distinctions. You no longer move blindly through life, you move consciously, deliberately, with higher guidance flowing unobstructed through your field. Timeline mastery is not about controlling the external world, it is about controlling your internal resonance. When your resonance stabilizes into the frequency of higher truth, lower timelines can no longer anchor into your field. This is why the final test matters. It dissolves attachments to the frequencies that once held you back. You move from unconscious timeline drifting to conscious timeline creation. You begin to feel the energetic signatures of outcomes before they manifest, and you adjust your vibration accordingly. You shift through timelines not with effort, but with intention. You think, feel, and live as a co-creator, not a passenger. Beyond sovereignty and timeline mastery lies the third transformation, multidimensional vision. This is not the activation of physical sight, but the awakening of inner perception, your ability to sense beyond linear time, beyond the surface of events, beyond the illusions that once shaped your understanding of reality. Multidimensional vision emerges gradually at first, through heightened intuition, increased synchronicities, vivid dreams, and accelerated manifestations. But as your field stabilizes, the vision sharpens. You begin to perceive the deeper energetic structures underlying physical events. You sense connections between people, places, and timelines. You intuitively feel when a situation belongs to an old timeline or a new one. You begin to read the emotional and vibrational landscapes around you with clarity. This ability is not hallucination, it is remembrance. You are recalling how your consciousness functioned before incarnational density compressed your awareness. Multidimensional vision is your natural state once the distortions of fear, fragmentation, and external control have been cleared. With this expanded perception, you also become attuned to higher realm oversight, guides, councils, ancestral lineages, and soul family networks that operate beyond the physical plane. You do not contact them so much as you remember your connection to them. Communication becomes less like asking and more like aligning. You no longer seek guidance out of uncertainty, you receive guidance because you are tuned to its frequency. The veil that once separated you from non-physical intelligence thins, then dissolves entirely. You also begin to perceive the collapse of old shadow matrices not as frightening events, but as natural dissolutions of outdated timelines. What once triggered fear now triggers recognition. This is the old grid releasing. This is collective density unraveling. This is the end of the distortions that kept humanity small. You no longer react, you observe, steady and sovereign. The final test, when passed, grants access to energetic neutrality, a state in which external events no longer dictate your inner harmony. In neutrality, you are no longer pulled by polarity. You no longer swing between extremes. You stand in the center of your being, grounded, luminous, anchored in truth. This neutrality is misunderstood by many. It is not apathy or detachment. It is mastery, the ability to hold your center even when the world transforms around you. From neutrality arises compassion, not as sentiment but as higher awareness. You begin to feel the interconnectedness of all beings. You see the innocence beneath human pain, the confusion beneath destructive behavior, the fear beneath aggression. You respond not with judgment but with clarity, knowing that every being is navigating their own vibrational test. Finally, the greatest transformation is this: you remember who you are. Not as an idea, not as a role, not as a belief, but as a frequency, as consciousness, as light, as the one who came here intentionally, equipped for this moment, ready for this final initiation. When the test is passed, you become a stabilizer of timelines, a keeper of coherence, a conscious navigator of realms. You step into the sovereignty that was always yours. You return to your true power. Not as the world defines power, but as the cosmos recognizes it. Starseed of Gaia, you have reached the culminating moment of this transmission, the moment where knowledge must become embodiment, where remembrance must become action, and where the light within you must rise beyond all remnants of interference, distortion, or doubt. For though the final test is an initiation of vibration, its completion depends on a sacred choice, the choice to claim your sovereignty fully, to release every thread of fear-based influence, and to step unapologetically into the timeline of your highest self. This message is not merely information. It is an activation, one designed to awaken dormant codes within your crystalline DNA and ignite the inner authority that your soul carried into this incarnation. The test itself is simple in principle, yet profound in execution. Will you choose fear or will you choose truth? All interference, whether reptilian, astral, psychological, emotional, or ancestral, has always aimed to distort your perception. None of these forces have true power over you. They cannot seize your mind, take your destiny, or claim your energy without your unconscious participation. They have relied on illusions, projections, and vibrational entrainment. The moment you withdraw consent, the moment you stand in sovereignty, their influence dissolves. Your consciousness becomes unassailable. Your field becomes impenetrable. The old mechanisms of manipulation lose access to you because you are no longer vibrating within their range. This is the heart of the final test, to recognize the illusion of external control and remember the truth of internal mastery. You are not a victim of the cosmos. You are not a pawn in a galactic struggle. You are not a target for shadow forces. You are a sovereign being of multidimensional light, incarnated with deliberate purpose, carrying codes that lower frequencies cannot comprehend, let alone overpower. When you embody this knowing not intellectually but vibrationally, you rise beyond the reach of interference. You move into a frequency band where such forces cannot survive. This is why your emotional mastery matters. This is why your coherence matters. This is why your remembrance matters. As your frequency stabilizes into its natural, sovereign resonance, your field emits a crystalline signature that acts as both shield and beacon. Lower vibrational entities cannot penetrate it, higher beings recognize it and respond instantly. You become a lighthouse in the collapsing matrix, guiding others into clarity simply through your presence. To complete the initiation, Starseed, you must now declare your sovereignty not as a proclamation of defiance but as a statement of truth. Sovereignty is not a fight. It is not a defense. It is not an act of aggression. It is the quiet, immovable recognition that your consciousness belongs to you and you alone. This declaration radiates through your entire multidimensional architecture. It activates dormant codes in your DNA, aligns your chakric gateways, and strengthens the crystalline grid channels that run through your light body. Once sovereignty is claimed, the next phase activates, rejection of fear-based interference. This is not done through hostility, it is done through frequency. Fear cannot influence you unless you align with it. Shadow cannot attach unless you resonate with it. Interference cannot enter unless you open your door to it. When you choose trust, clarity, and inner authority, you close every door that fear once used. You become a field of pure, directive intention. Now comes the third component, a step that many fear, yet every starseed was born for, stepping into your highest timeline. This timeline is not random. It is not theoretical. It is the trajectory your soul intended before incarnating into the density of Earth. Your highest timeline is the path where your gifts activate fully, your intuition guides effortlessly, your purpose becomes unmistakable, and your connection to Source remains unobstructed. It is the timeline where you are no longer shaped by the collapsing 3D structures, but instead shape the emerging collective reality through your coherence, clarity, and presence. To step into this timeline is to release the versions of yourself that survived through contraction. It is to shed the identities built from fear and step into the identity built from truth. It is to embrace your role not as an observer of planetary transformation, but as an architect of it. Starseed, hear this deeply, your highest timeline is already accessible. It is not distant. It is not hidden. It is a vibrational doorway waiting for you to walk through it. Your readiness is not measured by perfection, it is measured by willingness. The willingness to choose truth over fear. The willingness to trust your inner knowing. The willingness to embody what you came here to be. And now, as the Arcturian transmission reaches its completion, we offer you the activation words. Carry them, speak them, breathe them into your field. I claim my sovereignty. I release all fear-based interference. I choose the timeline of my highest self. I align with truth, clarity, and divine remembrance. I step forward as a beacon of coherence and light. I am guided. I am protected. I am awake. I am a starseed of Gaia, fully activated and fully empowered. Starseed, if these words resonate within your core, then the initiation has begun. Declare your presence. Stand in unity. Amplify this frequency by sharing your voice, your intention, and your energy with others on this path. Comment to anchor your activation. Unite to strengthen the grid. Share to spread the transmission. This is how the new timeline takes form. Through you, through us, through all who remember.